Hello readers, I'm Amy. We are here in the office today because I was sitting in the office the other day just doing my homework as one does, and my husband calls over, "Hey, sweetie, type in lousybookcovers.com," and I did, and that's how this video's come to be because I am going to talk about some really terrible book covers. Now, this video is not throwing punches at the authors. Like, for all I know, the next Dostoevsky is hidden in this website. I kind of doubt it, but you never know. I'm not talking about the authors. I haven't read any of these books. I don't know what their writing's like, but these book covers are terrible. And I don't know who these authors went to get these book covers done. I don't know if they did them themselves. So yeah, we're just gonna roast some book covers. I'm gonna have some fun with this. This is just gonna be a really fun video, and I'm not just going to say, hey, this book cover is bad. We're going to talk about why it's bad, and maybe some of these I'll even come up with ideas on how to improve them. If you don't know, I would love to be a book cover designer someday. I'm actually finishing design school, or graphic design school, in March, and I'm hoping to find a job as a book cover designer, so we'll see where that goes. But anyways, today's video, we're just going to roast some terrible covers. And starting off, we have Bad Boy Bobby from the Escapade series. It's described as raunchy, humorous, and adventurous, and it's written by Carrie Hugh Dillon. So where do I start with this? Let's just start from the actual physical top and work our way down the picture. That seems like a good way to start. Bad Boy Bobby. First off, terrible title. Just bad title. There are so many ways you can come up with a title. You can talk about the subject matter, you can do a Gone with the Wind thing and pick a really neat phrase that you came up with off of like a random page in your book. But Bad Boy Bobby, why does it all have the same letters? This is obviously an adult book. We don't need alliteration. Also, the font, it's one of those like childhood fonts. It looks like it was written by a crayon in like this really basic print, and it's just really immature. And again, you've got Bad Boy Bobby. The title sounds like something you would read when you're maybe 5, and the font also for a book that you would read when you're maybe 5. So this being an adult book, we're not doing so hot here. The bright yellow, I mean, I love a good yellow book. I think this is the wrong shade of yellow. It's very like neon. I don't know why it would be neon yellow, but that's besides the point. Like, the color is actually probably the best thing about this cover. Escapade series. It's there are certain fonts that can go together, and these two fonts don't work together. You have this childish Bad Boy Bobby font, and then you go to the Escapade series, and it looks like a font for a bank or something. And I'm like, how are these two fonts working together? Also, if you're going to have it as part of a series, that should be a lot closer to the title than it is, or on the other side of the cover from the title, one of the two. And then we have the pictures. The photoshopping is fine, like the lines are really clean and everything, but the photos are more illustrative of a movie cover. Now, I don't totally understand how the psychology and the design works when it comes to the difference between movie and book covers. I don't know how designers come to those decisions. I would love to look into that more, but this is definitely more something you would see on a movie poster rather than on a book cover. I think part of it is that book readers, we don't usually have pictures in the books as adults unless you're reading like a graphic novel, in which case it's drawn out. And generally as readers, we like to imagine the characters ourselves rather than having them presented for us. So that's part of the problem. Also, you don't usually see a woman in her underwear unless it's like a romance novel, and this is not quite what I would call a romance novel cover, so a little confused on that. And then we have the tagline down below that says raunchy, humorous, and adventurous. Books don't generally have taglines, at least not like that. It's a weird description to put on a cover. Yeah, that's kind of what I have to say about this. So It's not great. Next one I have some notes, but it's not awful. 99 Nightingale Lane. This is written by Andrea Hicks, and this is part 1. So I'll start with the titling and everything. Or maybe I don't know. Where do I want to start with this? Let's start with part 1. That's the simple part. Part 1, don't love it. For one thing, you have Andrea Hicks is her own font, 99 Nightingale Lane is its own font, and part 1 is its own font. Generally speaking, the rule of thumb is have 2 fonts. So part 1 and Andrea Hicks should probably be in the same font. But in general, I don't think I would have part 1 on the cover. You could say like book 1, but part 1 doesn't totally make sense because usually you go by number of books. Parts are divided within a book typically, like Stephen King will have different parts in one book. So I would say book 1 instead of part 1. Fix the font there a little bit. I do actually enjoy the font of 99 Nightingale Lane. It kind of goes with this like high class apartment kind of cover that we have going on. But a couple of things with that. The background is busy enough that either the background should change or the font should change, because I enjoy the picture and I enjoy the font for 99 Nightingale Lane, but they're both busy enough that they're kind of competing for attention, and we don't want to compete for attention. We want to see the title and then see the cover, or well, yeah, usually you want to see the title first. You just don't want them to compete for attention like that. And then the girl in the bottom corner is by far the worst part of this. Very bad photoshopping in that the finish on the photo is completely different. The girl is kind of it's been lightened, it's been faded out, it's been softened, but then you have this super colorful, sharp photo that she's put over top of, and they don't really go together. Also, judging by the size of the door and like the fence, is the door photoshopped on here? I can't quite tell. But judging by the size of the fence, usually you're going to be a little taller than the fence. If she stood up, her head would barely go over the fence. She is the wrong size. The photo coloring is way off. I have no idea what she's sitting on, but it doesn't have anything to do with the stoop here. I think if you just took her out, cover would be a lot better for it. I think my suggestion here would be, if you want to keep the cover, I would zoom in a little more and then put Nightingale Lane underneath the number 99 that is already on the door. And then you could keep your font, you could keep your cover, and they wouldn't be competing quite so much. So it's not terrible. I think it's got some good basics here. Definitely better than Bad Boy Bobby. Okay, first off, if I have to look that hard at your cover to tell what it even says, we're not off to a good start. This is Watermelon Summer by Kenneth Mattern, I think. I don't know. First, the skull needs to go. If you can't tell, there is a skull kind of imprint right in the center of the cover, and it's hard enough to see that you wouldn't immediately notice it, but it's easy enough to see that it's kind of throwing me off from the whole thing. And the texture of the cover isn't quite working for me. And the font needs to change. So starting with the font, I'm gonna have to come up with a different way to start each of these. I think my number one suggestion here, besides getting rid of the skull, is going to be that I think the watermelon should have been cracked over a sidewalk, because a sidewalk has a very smooth texture versus this gravelly background, this gravelly ground that the watermelon is on. And because of the texture of the watermelon competing with the texture of the ground, and then you have the texture of the font competing with the texture of the ground, because that's mostly what the font is imposed over, it's too much texture going on. So get rid of the skull, have a smoother ground on which to break your watermelon, and then I would darken up the red of the font so that it's not so bright, because the brightness with the textured background, again, we're really competing for attention here, and it's hurting my eyes just to look at my screen right now. So I would darken that up, and then I think you could keep the drips, or you could keep the texture on the font, but I wouldn't have both because it's just a little bit much. So again, we have like some good elements here, but needs some work. Bad Medicine by James B. Cahoon. First off, the Global Book Award. As many of us book readers do, I hate the sticker. I hate it so much. It's an online sticker on an online cover, so it's not like I can just remove the sticker, but that's besides the point. It's not the worst. It is a book too. There's no such thing as a vigilante doctor, ... right? That is what you would have on a cover, not like some catchphrase like on Bad Boy Bobby. This is actually like a line that gets you intrigued about what the story might be. What this does is something a lot of books do, particularly like the mass market paperback books of like Dean Koontz, or you see this with people like Stephen King, where that just made me notice so many other things, but the name of the author is just as big as the title, and I don't love it when that happens. To me, the title of a book and the subject matter of the book is generally a little more important than the author, even if it's like Stephen King, whose books are really collectibles at this point. I don't think his name should necessarily be competing with the title. It's kind of a selling point. They're trying to sell the author before they sell the content of the book. Don't love that, but it happens. What gets me with this, James B. Cahoon is generally speaking the same size as the title, but the kerning just, if you're gonna do this, do it right. And first off, make Medicine the same size font as James B. Cahoon. Medicine is actually a little smaller because it's a longer word, so you should probably make James B. Cahoon smaller to match Medicine. And then Bad is in bigger letters than the author, and the kerning is changed to make it take up more space. Don't love that. Don't love it at all. There's a couple ways that you could do this. You could make Bad the same kerning and size as Medicine, which really is what you should do. And maybe instead of centering it, you could have Bad off to the right so that the B and the M are lined up. Other thing you could do is use a different word than Bad. Use something a little bigger in verbiage so that it matches the size of the word Medicine, or is at least closer. And then you could center it like you clearly want to in this case, or maybe not so clearly. Because now when I'm looking at James B. Cahoon, the J and the C are lined up, but the period at the end is not lined up with the N. So that is off to the left instead of being centered. The font and the lineups are just all wrong here. Hold on, I'm gonna change my battery. All right, I'm back. So the font itself, outside of the terrible spacing, the font itself is not bad at all. It's got a bit of a drop shadow. It's in black and white, so it's easy to read. The photo in the back is bad. I think you should have done either or, like either have the IV bag and maybe have it closer up, or have the woman. But again, we've got a similar thing to that 99 Nightingale Lane thing where the effects put on the photo of the woman just don't match the cover. There's not enough contrast there. It's had some sort of like drawing effect put over it, so it looks more photorealistic rather than actually like a photo. And if you look at the lines going down her forehead, the line work is not good. It needs to be cleaned up. Honestly, if you have a phone that was made after like 2012, then it has a camera. So if you're gonna be doing stuff like this, where it's a woman with a mask and a headband, take your own photo. It's really not that hard. Last cover on this page is Twisted World, a Broken World novel by Kate L. Mary. Again, photos with different finishes. You've got, the background is almost more of like a painting, and then you have this woman at the front. Honestly, if you got rid of the woman, I would be interested in this photo. Like, get rid of the woman, and then this sort of painting background actually looks really nice, and like it looks interesting. It's textured, but with the contrast, it's not too much texture. The font needs to be changed, obviously. Twisted and World are kind of bothering me. Like, really, you could keep Twisted as is and just change World, a Broken World novel, and Kate L. Mary so that it's the same font as it is at the top where it says Twisted Book 1. Honestly, I think that's all you'd have to do. Like, this cover has a lot going for it. If you just changed the 3 fonts into 2 fonts and got rid of the woman, I would consider reading this book. It's not awful. I think I'm gonna go ahead and end it there since we just got through the first, like the front page of this. If you would like to see this video in the future, do comment down below. I would actually love to do this again. Like, this is fun. Please like, subscribe, be my friend on social media. I will see all of you in my next video. Bye, friends.